Right, hello everybody. My name's Hamish Chalmers. I'm a co-director of the Oxford Education Deanery. The Deanery's mission is to put the research and researchers at the Department of Education at the University of Oxford into closer contact with practitioners and stakeholders around the world, people who stand to benefit from the research that we do and the knowledge that we generate, but also really important to have you coming back into the conversation with the knowledge that you generate. This is the latest in a series of events by our sustainability team, and today's event is entitled Gamifying Climate Education. So I'm very pleased to welcome Bill Finnegan, Andrew Jones, and Emma Fielders, who are going to be delivering the session today. Please, if you like what you see today and you would like to share information about the work of the Deanery among your networks, then have a look at our websites, at the Oxford Department of Education Deanery website, where you can find information about upcoming events, again, around climate, but also lots of other things, and sign up for our newsletter. I promise you we don't spam you. It's an email, a term to keep you updated with the events of the Deanery and its associated organisations. So I will not take you any more of your time and will pass over to Bill for what I am sure will be a fascinating seminar. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Hamish, for that introduction. Let me just get my slides going. Great. If I can get a thumbs up from someone that you can see my slides. Great. All right. So I'm Bill Finnegan. I'm at the University of Oxford in the environmental sustainability team, where my role is sustainability education and research manager. I also sit in Oxford Lifelong Learning, where I'm involved in our social sciences team, as well as some programs related to climate change education, and a co-investigator in the ETC Hub, Education and Training for the Climate. So very pleased to bring you this webinar today. The ETC Hub is a group of researchers from across the University of Oxford. This hub is hosted in the Department of Education under SCOPE, a research initiative, and we've been able to collaborate with the Deanery for a number of these webinars, again, which kind of bridge that research practice question when it comes to climate change education, training for green jobs, etc. So welcome to this, one of our termly webinars. We do have some things planned for next term as well, so keep an eye out for those. You can find out about them on our website or on our own mailing list. And for example, we will have a visiting researcher from the Caribbean, so someone from Jamaica talking about climate change education at the front lines. And there'll be some updates perhaps from the Net Zero Education project, Net Zero Ed, which is happening through the ETC Hub. That's the ETC Hub. Also wanted to say happy Green Action Week. This week is Green Action Week at the University of Oxford. There's a number of events happening across the university, and we're excited that this is a webinar that is reaching people across the world to kind of bring them into some of this, again, exchange between research and practice when it comes to education, and particularly climate and sustainability education. And then the last bit, I saw that some people were already introducing themselves in the chat. So please do use the chat. This is how we will be able to have some question and answer session discussion after the presentations, but it's also, I know that Andrew will be actively using it in his session. So familiarize yourself with the chat, and to do that, just go ahead and tell us who you are, where you're coming from. So with that, I want to hand it over to our speakers. So we're going to start with Emma, who will be talking to us about her work, in particular, the How Bad Are Bananas game. Oops, sorry. And no, my computer's going funny. There we go. And I'll just try to get out of this screen now so I can stop sharing and hand it over to Emma. Great.
Thank you, Bill. Could you just confirm that you can see my screen as well? I have started sharing. Wonderful. Hi to everybody. Can we just get you on Mentimeter very quickly? I'm going to try and make this interactive, but we've got short windows of time today. So as soon as you've managed to get yourself in to the Mentimeter by pointing your camera at the QR code and just following the link, if you could just drop me a thumbs up or a heart, either within Teams or actually within Zoom, Mentimeter, then that would be fine. If you get booted out of Mentimeter at any point, if you go to menti.com and use the code, if you can see that thing at the top of the screen in the middle, if you ever, normally there's no technical issues, but if there are technical issues, you can normally get yourself back in by going onto a browser window, typing in menti.com and putting the number in. So if anybody can give me some indication as to whether they've actually managed to get into Mentimeter, then that would be good. Can I see a thumbs up or a heart? It's just an excuse to get some love from the audience. So, right. And also, I'm just going to make sure that I'm on time. So I think I've got 6 people in already out of 63. So if you can point your camera at the screen, at the QR code, if that doesn't work for you, go to a browser window, either on your computer or on your smartphone. It's a bit easier if you do it on your smart device, so that you can have both of them open at the same time, and type the code in, and then you should get into the room. I've got 9 of 63 in. Come on, folks. I bet you can do this. I'm going to give you just another 15 seconds to get yourself in. And you're really going to thank me when I ask you the first question, because I'm sure many of you are aware when we're talking about climate, then it's not necessarily the kind of picture we would have liked to have presented to people. And so what we tend to experience, both in the delivery of our carbon literacy, but also in terms of playing the game, is that it's quite an emotional space for people to be in. So I am going to move forwards. We've got 17 of you on the Mentimeter. So here's my first question to you. I will introduce myself more properly in a minute once you've answered this question. So when you say climate change, Emma, I feel, if you could just type some words to describe how you are currently feeling about climate change at the moment. If we get a chance to, we will try and revisit this question towards the end of the session, just to see whether today's session has made any difference or not. So yes, if you could just get into Menti, remember to press submit once you've typed your words in, and then we should start to see some words appearing on the screen. So I'm not getting anything yet. Are people typing? Bill, are you able to also let me know if you're able to
I'm
get
in
anything in?
Menti as well. Yeah, it is a bit slow for some reason, but or maybe it's just my phone. But yeah, I'm in it.
Okay. Yep. I don't know why we're not getting any answers. So I'm going to just flick from one screen and back again. Hopefully this is the only technical hitch we're going to get. It's never a problem. But you know what these things are like when you say you're going to do them. So, and doing a live test in 15 minutes is a bit on the tricky side. Can I ask them, whilst we're waiting for Mentimeter to wake up, if you can, well, Drew, I'm going to ask Drew. Drew, are you able to unmute yourself and just give me 2 or 3 words to describe how you feel about climate change at the moment?
Yes. Determined, curious, and angry.
Oh, I love those. That's great. And I know you work in the space as well, so I'm not surprised you're determined and curious. Finally, Menti's given us some other words. So thank you, Drew, for stepping in whilst we're waiting for the tech to catch up. I've done this with thousands of people across the world, and basically worried, anxious and concerned tend to be the 3 that we will always get with this number of people actually contributing. We are seeing more overwhelmed, more angry, more kind of powerlessness coming through as well. And I'm happy with skeptical as well, because I love to convert skeptics. It's my favourite thing to do, almost as much as filling the graveyard shift, which is obviously what we're in now. So normally we have a 2-way conversation about this, where I could talk to you about how you're feeling about climate, and I'm sorry that I've had to actually put you on that roller coaster to start off with. Anyway, we're going to get moving so we can play some of the game. So this is me. I'm essentially operating in the kind of confluence of being a sustainability professional by trade, also having come from an entire family of teachers, and I said that I'd never teach. So I absolutely failed as a teenager with that statement. So I come from the kind of teaching side of things as well. And obviously with my PhD hat on, I like to know that the kinds of things we're doing are impactful as well. So research is a really important part of what we do too. And my company, Future We Want, we're doing the focus on people. We've got lots of tech solutions to actually fix lots of climate issues around the world. Obviously, we have many more we need to develop in order to draw down the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. But essentially what we're trying to contribute to is to kind of activate people, get them to feel they have some agency, so you're not feeling desperate and overwhelmed, and you're able to do things, and you're engaged and informed and inspired. And we do that through a mixture of things. I largely write carbon literacy courses and deliver those with different organisations. And we have the carbon footprint game that we're all going to have a little bit of a play around with. I have already given you my LinkedIn contact, but if people want to do this, I will send these slides out afterwards and you'll be able to access these. So that's me. Back to you, though. I want you to tell me how many people care about the climate around the globe. All of the material I share with you today is stuff that's based on the best science that we have, on either behavioural change science, social movement theory, or carbon footprinting. So if you can actually get back into your Mentimeter and vote on this. So if you guess, what percentage of people actually care about climate? Is it between 50 to 56, 65 to 75, or 80 to 89%? And that's really quite split, actually. That's an interesting result. Most sort of general public audiences would choose the 50 to 56 because I think we largely make an assumption that most other people don't really care about this, because it's like we're not seeing anybody acting, so we just assume they don't care. Actually, this is based on some amalgamated data from many countries across the world. And on average, we're looking at between 80 to 89% of people care. So next time you go in a room and you see sort of 10 or so people in front of you, 8 of those people, you might well be one of them, actually care about what's going on with the climate. So next question. So I don't know how many climate scientists we've got in the room, but what percentage of the world's scientists would agree that the largest part of current global warming is actually person-made, man-made, girl-made, boy-made, they-made, whatever you want to call it? Is it 40%, 78%, 99%? So you choose. And there's a very explicit reason why I've put this question up for you. And this will also give me an idea about the background of some of the people who are coming today, because it's within climate circles largely well known now that actually 99% of scientists agree that the largest part of current global warming is actually down to humans. And I have a really cheeky little thing that I normally follow that one up with, which is 99% of scientists would agree that we live on a round Earth. And if you want to join the Flat Earth Society, I'm not going to tell you where in the world it is, but it's probably where you're guessing it is. Okay, so anyway, I like to say that because I think most people these days believe we live on a round Earth, and therefore that, you know, this is a very, very convincing piece of information. I know there's been some research actually done that shows that if there's one piece of information you can give to somebody that's going to make a difference, then it's actually this. So showing people what the scientific consensus is one of the things that will hopefully move them forwards. But actually, I think you'd probably agree with me that we're sort of stuck with regards to moving forwards, because actually the care and the concern doesn't necessarily translate into action. And that willingness to act and actually acting are not necessarily the same thing either. And the kind of education that we do only works if it's twinned with action. But action itself will create more action. And so that's why I advocate for carbon literacy as a way of getting people on board, because everybody who's got one of those certificates of carbon literacy has committed to delivering 2 actions. And that's what we need to see. We need to see people committed to it and actually delivering. And I've done a little bit of research with some of the people who've been through my training, and we know that sometime after the course, between 60 to 80% of people have actually delivered those actions. So we know that that action is happening mostly. If you want to find out more about this, then Krista Mayer is the Climate Action Unit's director over at UCL. This is a fantastic TED talk that explains more about this idea of actually we shouldn't really be trying to change attitudes or even educate. We actually just need to get people to act immediately. So I want you to walk away from today thinking about, well, what action are you actually going to take? And if we've got time, I will ask you to submit those actions at the end of the session. But I want us to just get cracking with the bananas game. So Here's our backstory, because Krista Mayer would also tell you that storytelling is the best way to get people's attention. So I started working with Mike Berners-Lee back in 2010 when he first published How Bad Are Bananas? And I gave a copy of his book to my now business partner, Anya Vishnik, who was an Erasmus student at the time at London University. And she created this game. It was so simple, but so effective. I had the light bulb moment and said, we can't just do this on Post-it notes in one university. We have to take it and set it free and let other people use it. So we're going to play the game. It's very simple. It's based on carbon footprint information. I'd normally ask you to tell me what a carbon footprint is, but we don't have time. But I'll tell you what the actual definition is, which is it's a calculation of all the greenhouse gas impacts of a particular thing, whether that's a person or a product or a city or a country or whatever. And actually, when I play this game with people, however they answer that first question gives me a really good indication as to where they're coming from, and then I can pitch my conversation with them as a facilitator accordingly. So we're going to compare cheese to shoes. Why would you not compare cheese to shoes? Because you might have cheesy shoes depending on how long you've kept them for. Okay, so you're going to compare a kilogram of cheddar to a pair of average shoes. Can you please vote on this straight away? I just want your immediate answer. I'm not actually going to show you this straight away. We're actually just going to hopefully capture your thoughts on this and then move on. So if you do see anything, cover your eyes. Everybody cover your eyes while I go through the slide in case the tech doesn't work. Yes, it worked. Okay, I'll tell you what the answer to that one was later. Okay, so let's pick it apart. So a kilogram of cheddar. So you tell me, folks, back in your Mentimeter, you know the drill. Where is the carbon footprint of the cheddar? And the parameter is the calculation finishes at the point you buy this in the shop. Okay, so it's everything yeah, thank you very much. You're very polite. I normally have people just put the word cow. Oh, there you go. We've got cow. And I'm glad you've said methane from cows as well. I think the King's got some cows who were actually part of an experiment. Check this out later on. It was while he was Prince rather than King. And they were wearing these crazy masks that were sucking all of the methane out from their cow burps and putting it into a can on their back so they could measure how much methane was in it. If you're one of the people who did that research, please contact me afterwards because I just talk about it all the time. So I'm having a look at everything on the screen. And I'm pleased to say that actually the thing that is often missing, it's really bizarre, but if I ask this question of lots of different groups, there's normally something missing from this footprint, but we've obviously got lots of people who understand it. And it's the refrigeration element. Now, you've managed to identify it, and obviously, you know, groups are often going to come up with the best answers to these things. But it's almost like refrigeration or the cooling process is kind of missing in our collective understanding of carbon footprints for cheddar. So that's the cheddar. What are we doing about the shoes now? They're average because there's a wide variety of footprints for different types of footwear. At the low end in Mike's book, you'd have a pair of Crocs, and at the very high end, you'd have a pair of leather boots. So an average bit of footwear, and these have been bought in the UK, and again, the carbon footprint will end at the point that you buy them in the shop. Is probably a pair of trainers or sneakers like the picture. So again, do the same thing, pull it apart, tell me where the carbon footprint is. So what I'm trying to show you is how this game actually works. And you might think, oh, it's simple, you know the answers, but you will probably work in climate, so it makes sense to you. But in terms of how other people connect with this, for a lot of people, they've not been through the process or the membrane that we call it, or the gateway of understanding that everything that they do has an impact, okay? And so actually to present this to some people, and the best kind of feedback I ever get from playing this game is you've changed the way I think. So even if I'm getting people to think critically and they go away and they start buying things in a different way, then I feel like I've actually done something positive. Okay. So now you get to vote for real. So cheddar and shoes, and I'll tell you later, if I can, whether your previous guess was any different or just the same. So please vote again. I'm letting a few of the votes come in before I show you where it's going. Okay. Your average member of the public, by the way, will choose shoes because we're still absolutely tied to this idea of carbon footprint having more to do with the travel element than anything else. But actually, correctly, you have guessed the cheddar, okay? And the reason I'm saying this thing about, that we think the shoes and its travel is because it's only the bit of the footprint that we visualize that we have that real connection with. So the cheddar's much higher. If you want to lower your footprint from cheese, then you will eat soft cheese rather than hard cheese because it has a lower carbon footprint. But have a think about how long your shoes will last in comparison to that block of cheese in a family fridge, and you'll scare yourself to death. So very, very quickly, the average UK person's footprint is about 13,000. I know there's people from all over the world today, but it's about 13 tons or 13,000 kilograms of CO2e. That's the size of a UK terraced house. 1 ton is the size of a terraced house. So if I have an average footprint, I'll fill 13 houses full of gases every year. I think I'm going to have to leave it there unless everybody can really, really quickly vote on the very last one. Because do you want to know about bananas and tomatoes? Drew, I'm going to be as quick as I can, mate, but I'll probably be doing the 16 minutes. Oh, create your own footprint here as well, by the way. Okay. Last comparison. Obviously, you want to know kilogram of bananas versus a kilogram of vine, cherry tomatoes. They're organic, they're grown in the UK, and they're ready in March. So over to you. Bananas or tomatoes? Which is it? And this is where we find out whether you've read the book or not, maybe. I don't know. Oh, it's quite neck and neck, isn't it? So some of you perhaps have not been persuaded by the title of the book that bananas are bad, which is good, because bananas are actually brilliant. For 3 reasons. They're grown naturally, they only travel on boats, and they come in their own packaging. And this particular way of buying a tomato or growing a tomato is ridiculous because it's been grown in a heated greenhouse in the UK in the middle of winter. So if you're in the UK and you want fresh tomatoes in the winter, get Italian, Moroccan or Spanish. Even though they've travelled that distance, they'd have half the footprint. So I think that might be enough for me. I'm not going to explain why games work, but the things to take away: keep it visual, create simple actions, share stories, lead with action. And you can't even come on this carbon literacy course because we're now full. But if you want to have a postcard that does what you've just done with the banana and tomatoes, connect me on LinkedIn and we'll take it from there. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Emma, for that, and appreciate the rapid fire version of the game, and look forward to digging into some of those additional questions in the Q&A afterwards. So now I want to welcome Andrew Jones, who is the force behind Climate Interactive and the En-ROADS and C-ROADS climate simulators, who's going to take us through another gamified experience, and then we'll kind of talk about it afterwards. So over to you, Andrew.
All right. Hello, everybody. Emma, that was great. Didn't know the book. I didn't know the game. I love like the decision points with the cards and then going deeper. You trick us in with like, oh, I'm just going to make a decision. And suddenly you're trying to figure out, and I was totally off base with that banana tomato one. That was great. And I see there are a lot of other people with using so many games. I see Nick Harrison writing about the Red Cross Red Crescent climate game, Decisions for the Decade, which I lead with my students as well, with a geoengineering twist created by the late, amazing Pablo Suarez. I don't know if anyone else knows, but he died like last year, and he was just this amazing game designer who made this great game that is really about climate adaptation. I encourage you, Nick, if you can share. Oh, you do share it here. So the theme here, Pablo was the maestro. He was amazing. So we are Climate Interactive, a US-based nonprofit that builds climate simulations and workshops and games that we embed them with. We work closely with MIT Sloan, the business school, and they've had many years of modeling, computer modeling, but also embedding those models in games. Going back to the 1950s, there's a game called the Beer Game that we're all the people in my field of system dynamics are trained to use, but we've always embedded models in games, frankly, because that's how you actually change behavior. To change deeply held mental models, you need to be embedded in these systems. 90% of our work is on climate policy using this international model, En-ROADS, E-N-R-O-A-D-S, to affect global investments and policies in the banking industry and with policymakers. 10% of our time is, hey, let's put this in a game, share it with the world. So for the last 20 years, we've been developing a series of kind of building on the model UN setup of, there's a Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres. I come in with my tie on and coat and very formal, and I welcome people to a climate summit from different stakeholder groups. And the idea is really to focus very far from personal footprint and towards this world of what collective action is the most effective in getting us to a future where we stay well below 2 degrees. So what it looks like will be something like this of, I want to share my screen. Here it comes. This is the group at MIT that we work closely with, the MIT Pathways Project. John Sturman was my thesis advisor there. But it looks like this. You see these 8 groups. There's this team, and over in the bottom right corner says industry and commerce. So they're industry and commerce, conventional energy, clean tech, land and ag, developed countries, developing countries, climate activists. You see them standing in the back there. They don't have chairs. So there's an inequity because at these conferences, the developing countries and the activists sit on the floor. You see this group is Climate Justice Hawks. This is Florian Kappmeyer in Germany leading the game. They have less food than the people at the tables. So there's an inequity element. And you basically say, we have a summit and we need to solve this problem in the next 2 hours. And the core of it is team players make speeches. You have 1 minute to propose your favorite climate solution. This is someone from industry and commerce. So sometimes there are props like this. This is at MIT. All the incoming business school students at MIT went through the game. There they are making their speech. And then they negotiate. This is a group of Indian students, but they're playing the role of China. Climate activists sometimes take over and hold up signs like this. And it's been played all over the world. So my question to you is like, we have a few minutes. Let's play the world's shortest version of this game. And how this is going to look is, here we are. So let's play. I'm Antonio Guterres. We have to get well below 2 degrees. And I would like anybody whose first name starts between A and M. You are conventional energy. You are Saudi Aramco and Exxon and Shell and Total and all of them, BP. If your name is in the second half, you're a climate activist. So go into the chat and what is a solution? And when it comes to that, as you're writing, I can only look at one. So I'm going to look again and I'm going to show you the screen. We're going to test this in our simulation En-ROADS. And the En-ROADS simulation is here. You can use it today for free in 21 languages right here. And it's being used by 1.7 million people right now. You will be able to test it here. If you had said energy efficiency, you would see a change like this. You would see energy change. You would see emissions change. This is the pollution. You would see temperature change. You would see impacts change. Hey, what happens to air pollution around the world if we made that change? So that's how it's going to work. And as a prompt, look at the bottom here. These are the main sliders. There are also advanced versions. You can go dig into the numbers, but really simply, you can change coal, oil, gas, renewables. You can have fusion energy, carbon removal, work on methane, deforestation. You get the idea. So I'm going to go back and look. It's going to be a little awkward because I'm going to look and see what you've written. Synthetic fuel, alternatives cheaper, nuclear, micronuclear. This is it. Planting trees, fossil fuel phase out. That's somebody, the activist group. Natural gas is a transition fuel. Carbon pricing. planting trees. I'm oil industry, Emma. Infiltrate all the green groups and squash their online media. This is the kind of energy we love and what comes up in the game that makes people want to engage deeply. Renewables, more taxes, plant-based diets. Great. This is what we hear from all those people you saw their pictures. So what did I see? Renewables, plant-based diets. I need to write this down so remember. Renewables, plant diets, carbon price, do nothing. That's the, you can say that's the fossil fuel world. Natural gas as a transition fuel. There's the fossil fuel argument, right? More nuclear reactors. Okay, let's go back over to the model. So how the game works and is this. Someone comes up and makes the speech and they say, hi, I represent conventional energy. And here's what we need to do. And they'll say something like, energy is crucial for development around the world. We're lifting people out of poverty. It's the revenues in the producing countries that pay for hospitals and schools. And if we don't find more and more coal, oil, and gas, prices will go up. People will suffer. We're here for you. Climate's important. Here's some of what we propose. And as you mentioned, well, natural gas is a lower carbon energy. So let's have natural gas, more natural gas as a transition fuel to give us some time later in the century. So they would go up and you would propose that and you say, well, what's going on with natural gas? We can go look, and here is natural gas going into the future. And what's going on? Well, it's been rising and it flattens out over time. People will get curious of like, well, why is it rising? What's behind that? And so people will want to go and look. You can imagine how much they'll want to dig into energy consumption and total energy going up and things like population they'll want to look at and energy and economic growth. So they'll look at many of the drivers, but then say, this is what we see as coming from natural gas in this tested model. And we could talk about the testing another time. Here it is. Renewables. What if we, natural gas. What if we have more natural gas? What if it's already subsidized? What if we subsidize it more? Boom. You can see we get more of it, and there's almost a negligible change in temperature. Emissions go up a tiny, tiny bit. Go over here, we could go see, boy, it is, in 2080, it's not 2.82, it's 2.83. It's 1/100th of a degree warmer. Well, wait, I thought it would kill a lot of coal. It killed a little bit of coal. We got more gas. No, that really doesn't do that much. Someone said as a solution, plant trees. And that often comes up. Let's go see carbon removal. Plant a bunch of trees. And you can go under here and say, what if we plant a lot of trees? 0.1 degree, but only out in the 2060s and 2070s. It's very delayed. So you can imagine not just these areas, but hydrogen, carbon capture and storage. What if we invent fusion? We will explore many of these kinds of approaches. Then the other person spoke up. I saw that you had some other ideas here about plant-based diets, carbon pricing. So on the other side of this, then you would have the activists from another group, the climate hawks, and they're going to say, how about carbon pricing? And as you all know, that if we have high carbon pricing, we get a significant drop in temperature. People gasp when they see, oh my gosh, if we were able to price carbon, how much that would affect things. And then we know that if we were to add things such as, and other groups will eventually say this, what if we have less food from animals, less food waste, better agricultural practices regarding cheese, for example, waste and leakage being cut, renewables. And you can imagine over the hours, people will add policies, remove policies, and then eventually get to a scenario well below 2 degrees. They explore the impacts of it, like, wow, air pollution drops so much. Wow, the temperature in some part of the world using these big important maps that can show you in India how the temperature would be very different in the future. They get to see these results. The overall idea is that through role play, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Through role play, we have people walk in the shoes of these different stakeholder groups. I didn't tell you, but in the setup, I take the most environmentally driven team members at the corporation or students, and they play conventional energy. So they have to walk in the shoes of being the CEO of ExxonMobil, Darren Woods. The other side, you take the most climate action wary people in the room, and they're Greta Thunberg sitting on the floor leading the activism. And people really get into it, playing the roles, researching things. We have pieces of paper, of course, that describe here's your position, here's what you really want to vote for. And we find it incredibly engaging. We did a study of what happens, and we found that before and after, there was a significant improvement in the willingness to act on climate change. So this is the paper. I'll see if I could just share it. Interactive role play with climate policy simulation can motivate evidence-based climate action. I think I'm going to paste it right here. Did that go in? I think so. Rooney Varga et al. And the diagram there explains it pretty well. Simulated climate solutions plus social engagement and deliberation. We find that people learn things about the climate system and they have effective engagement that actually leads them to act. And we quantified how much afterwards and then 6 months later as well. The main offer here is, hey, go learn to play this game. We have a whole course of videos that you can watch. They're all out of the Climate Interactive website, and all of the materials here. You can imagine that we give here's the description, we print out, here is the role description for that ExxonMobil team right here. Overall, role play engagement with a science-based computer simulation works to both have people understand what's going on and have that lead to effective action in this context of what sort of collective action around the world is needed to meet climate goals. This is here as an offer to you all. It's also in parallel, we hope, contributing to the general knowledge about how do we gamify climate action. Here's one example of what works. And I'm just fascinated by any reaction to this or anything else that we can share. Oh, and I see Adriana is using En-ROADS with 6th form students. Fantastic. Great to see that some people are out there are already using the tool. And that's it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Andrew. That was really great. And again, it's such an interesting combination of programs, models. We're thinking about, again, programs that originated in the US context, in the UK context. We're thinking about working at different scales, but again, the interrelationship between these scales, I think, being a really interesting way of them coming together. To everyone who's joining us, please do ask some questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat as best I can to bring some questions up, and also it's always easy if people give a thumbs up to a question for if they want to see that answered. That helps me highlight particular ones that are of interest. I kind of wanted to start with a question to both of you that I think it's present in both of your presentations. But I think it's this bigger thread that we're picking up across kind of the multiple webinars we're leading. So there's the fact that many people will think of climate change education as something that happens in schools, or education in general, learning is something that happens in classrooms. And I think there are then people, and many of the people on the call who work in higher education, who realize, well, they might have a slightly different conversation about sustainability education, education for sustainability, education for sustainable development in a higher education institution versus in the US setting K through 12, in the UK primary secondary school. What I really love about what you're both bringing to this is showing us examples of where learning happens in other places. And it might get labeled as informal learning because of maybe the role of the learner and in how they participate in it. But I think it's also illustrating something that doesn't happen as naturally in many of our constrained classrooms, which are so focused on knowledge and transmission of knowledge, and then assessment of if that knowledge was transmitted. So I'm just curious, and it came up again in that diagram you were showing, Andrew, in the research. I think, Emma, it came up a little bit in kind of how you were even just talking about um, the the way you engage with audiences emotionally, the way you engage with them in terms of critical thinking. So from your perspectives, what is the learning that you think needs to happen for climate action, and where does it happen? How does it happen? And maybe even kind of to counteract this, I don't know, idea that again, it happens in classrooms, it happens in schools.
Yeah.
Shall I go first? I'd say that we shouldn't underestimate the impact of anything that's extracurricular. And so the game has managed to make it into both realms. So I know there are people playing it in schools, colleges, universities, FE, as part of their training learning. And also there are people who are using it as a kind of a tool to actually do outreach. And I know you do the same yourself, don't you, Bill? At Oxford, you've got a set that you're using with both of your hats on. And I think that's the really nice thing about the simplicity of the carbon footprint game, is that it can actually relate in any of those areas. I mean, I think if anything, I've perhaps not done a great thing with the way I've run the company, because I should have just focused on one audience and just kind of like tried to just, nail one particular audience. But the difficulty I've had is, we have NHS, we have local authorities, lots of people understand this because it's a really simple concept. But there's something about comparing items that does something very kind of interesting in your brain, and it really makes you think deeply about it. And I think to reflect on what I suggested Krista Mayer is saying, is that actually we need to tell stories. If you think about what I sort of tried to do a little bit with picking apart the game, just using 2 cards, is you then see the story of that life cycle of that product. The reason that it works for most people is because they can connect directly, because actually we all eat food, wear clothes, do some of the things on the cards. So because it's in a game format, though, you're not feeling blamed, shamed or judged. So you're free to sort of just come and greet it with curiosity. And I think that's the wonder of games. And I'm sure Drew would probably say the same as well. And you sort of said curious at the very start of my session as well. I think we need it everywhere. And then there's all of these brilliant, humorous videos and comedians. And I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff out there on LinkedIn where they're doing spoof things. It's very like Monty Python, these sort of comedy videos about trying to encourage people to poke the oil industry or the banking or the investment industry. I could think of a number of different kind of campaigns that are just working really well. And I think what's happening is we're seeing this mad diversity of ways of reaching people. If you're just connected to the right people on LinkedIn, so get connected and you'll start to see it, because I'm sort of nearly every day going, well, that is a brilliant way to actually deliver some climate learning. And it's not game, it could be video, it could be, it could be anything. And I think we've not got to limit what we think is going to be a thing that will work, because we need to use everything that we've got to try and reach as many people as possible. Sorry, I rambled a bit there. So over to Drew.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And Andrew, I mean, again, the question there is kind of this learning that you see happening, whether it's decision makers or kind of active, simulated environments like you just described. Again, what's different about that learning than typical learning in a classroom, and kind of where does it take us?
Yeah, I'd like to speak, Bill, to the component of like the location and the setting and just to name the application of these principles of the gamified learning in policymaker settings. So I had a session with 30 members of US Congress in the lead up to the passage of our historic but now dismantled climate bill called the IRA years ago. And it was 30 members of Congress, the House and the Senate around a table with the screen behind me. And I played a version of the game I showed you but it wasn't in role play. It was, okay, everybody, you have a job. Here's your game. Can you get that number down below 2? And they're like, yeah, that's a challenge. I can do it. And I say, what do you got? And they do the same thing you just said. Plant-based diets, phase out fossil fuels. And, they're suddenly in it. And so just the small gamification of a meeting versus a PowerPoint deck of here are the solution types, lecture, 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 gamified. And these members of Congress, they loved it. It was fun. They got into it, and it can be used in all sorts of climate literacy. They don't call it education. It's building climate literacy for top decision makers.
That's great. I mean, another thing I was just thinking about is, and even just the way you described it there, is the fact that under the hood of both of these games, there's a lot of science. And I think that's a really interesting thing, which is that someone can play it fairly casually and kind of get a sense of how it might apply to their life, or how it applies to something that, again, they're watching television, people talking about net zero or climate change, and they can kind of see these scenarios. But it's that evidence-based science base which is underneath every aspect of the simulation. It's where you can get the kind of calculation of footprints and the detailed guidance you provide. I'm sorry, I speak from experience because, again, as Emma mentioned, we use How Bad Are Bananas at Oxford during Freshers Week for engagement and kind of various ways of engaging different stakeholders. And then we use En-ROADS. In a program called the Vice Chancellor's Colloquium, we've just had about 250 students using it in sessions where they're basically have an hour to get it below 2 degrees, and then they have to then communicate it as if they were being interviewed by Radio 4 or BBC. And so, but I think in both cases, then you can look under the hood and see, oh yeah, well, this is based on real research, and it's very transparent. We're in a strange time in terms of people trusting expertise and being kind of evidence-led, science-led. So I don't know if this is something that still feels really important to you both. That, again, that you feel very strong in your foundation of science, even at a time when public trust of science at other institutions seems to be moving away, or science literacy is in question. Again, I can't help but think of some of the US context when it comes to whether it's health or climate. It's a strange time. But anyhow, this is more a question of the science underneath. How does that help you? Where does that take us?
Drew?
Yeah, I find, as always, like, it's never been good when someone says, why is that so? Plant-based diets didn't help very much. And you say, well, it's been proven. There are these studies. What does work is good old-fashioned, like, logic and clear explanations grounded in the science. Like, I wouldn't know what I know about why, when you have cheese, like all of the causal connections that Emma was referring to. And, you gotta chop down the trees to make the land, to grow the crops, to feed the cows, and the trees, like, those explanations come from science. And then with policymakers, they want to hear why what's up is what it is. And explaining what is in plain terms is what science gives us. So we should use it that way to explain what's going on in ways that make sense to people. And we don't need to say the science proves it. It should be intuitive at best. And we are the communicators of those insights and truths. We don't rely on science being regarded a certain way. We just rely on logic matters, and people still do respond to logic.
I would say, though, I think we've got a bit of a gap. So obviously it's brilliant that Drew's been able to show us the actual evidence of En-ROADS working, but I think we're still in a kind of old mode of thinking about how to actually engage around climate. We're thinking that scaring people or just sort of slapping them around with the face with the science is the right way to do it. And I'm sure anybody who's in here might understand some of the programs that I might be referring to. Personally, I think it will work, and we know that fear can work to motivate people. Again, Krista Mayer talks wonderfully about this in a podcast he did with Dickon Stone, Bonvic Stone, fairly recently online on communicating climate change. communicating climate change. And he was talking about, well, the fear will motivate some people, but it's going to be a very small percentage in comparison to actually having a nice conversation with somebody. It might all be based on the science. And actually, for some people, I don't think they even need to know that it's the science. I've long had a fantastic colleague I used to work with at Leicester Uni, Dr. Sandra Lee. She started doing little doodles to actually kind of try and demystify some of the stuff in this space. Her company's called Drawn to Reason, if people are interested. But, we've got to find all these different ways, like cartoon ways, public speaking ways. Yes, it needs to be based on science. Yes, obviously, we have the science of the actual physical climate change, but we need desperately to fill the gap on what behavioural change science can tell us about what works, which is, again, why I've been invited to apply to become a consultant for the Carbon Literacy Trust on the basis of I'm trying and encourage them to do more of the research side of things to show that what they're doing actually works, because it does. So, if you can hold people's hands. Somebody else asked in the discussion about people's emotions. And about how important it might be that we bring people through this and make sure that we honour their emotions on the way through. But actually, you can do that in a carbon literacy space. You've got 8 hours in which to actually bring people through. And other people will be like, well, that's too much. But I'm like, well, as an absolute minimum, I think you can take a cynical person who doesn't believe, you can skill them up and you can give them plenty of agency in order to actually then go out and be part of the solution and figure out their part of the solution for themselves. And that's what we really need to bring. Anything that's going to then get people acting, and it's the acting that's the important bit. I better shut up.
Yeah. No, this is great. And I'm also really enjoying what I'm seeing in the chat in terms of people sharing the projects they're working on, sharing links to things, having interesting conversations around systems thinking, various other things here. Another thing that just strikes me, and I think it ties to maybe that question of holding an emotional space or this kind of piece of inspiring young people and that being an outcome as well as knowledge and action. It ties in, Andrew, to the role plays that you were describing around kind of the affective emotional component of actually having to sit in someone else's shoes and maybe build a bit of empathy, but also have a bit of fun with it. So much of that in my mind depends on the facilitator. I'm just like, teaching depends on the teacher, but something I wonder about when we have these kind of facilitated interactive experiences, what is it that you do to ensure the best possible facilitated session happens? Obviously, training and resources are probably the natural answer to that, but there's some variability in it. I've had some experiences of training programs or even kind of climate games where I felt unsure about how the space was held, or I kind of couldn't help one voice in my head saying, "Oh, would something have happened differently? We would have a different conversation if we were led or held in a different way." So I don't know if you have any reactions on that question around facilitation.
Emma, you want to take a shot at it?
I kind of have an agreement with Mike Berners-Lee that we sell our game on the basis that we give enough tools so that people can actually skill themselves up to facilitate it properly. And I do feel that that's the kind of potentially the Achilles heel of some of these processes, because you do need somebody with some knowledge and some confidence and ability to teach to actually probably drive these forward in the best way. But I think the situation that we're in, we can help teach people those kind of facilitation skills if they don't have it and they do have the science knowledge. And we do also try and fill the gap on science knowledge where they do have the facilitation skill. So I think being very clear about what we need from facilitators to do these games, I think is actually kind of takes us part of the way there already. I don't know if that answered the question, Drew.
Yeah. What I find is that, frankly, with our game, at best, usually it works best if you have 2 people or one person with 2 very different skills. Because one of them is, do I understand the climate system? And can I use this simulation to help people understand it better? What I was doing very briefly with you. Another one is it's just teaching. Can you facilitate a group of people who are curious about something or make them curious about something and run a game and all the logistics of it? So it really is We find that people do best when there are two people doing it for the first 5 or 6 times, because excellence in both is essential. We're working right now on non-facilitated experiences. As you can imagine, it's getting very easy for us to use AI chatbots to engage with our simulator. And so that's happening more and more. Someone asked about museums. En-ROSE is in the MIT Museum. It's in several museums in Europe where you just walk up to it and you can click and poke around. But that is not as effective as a facilitated experience. To really learn from it, you need an excellent facilitator. How we get that, those two roles, is we teach how to facilitate, how to understand the model, and then people practice and practice and practice. And it is a good bit of work. It's not easy. It's worth it.
That's great.
I'm
Thank you.
convinced.
Emma, you had one final interactive thing for us. And as you get that up, I actually was just wondering if both of you might have kind of final words to share, because I feel like a lot of people who in the chat are indicating that they have their own games they're designing, or they're kind of working with game developers on gamification of climate education. Do you have any tips for people who are making games as people engage with your final questions?
And do you know what? Puya Samani's also had their hand up right from the very start. So I don't know if anybody's answered this question. I want you to be heartened that we only need 25% of the population to shift to create societal change. And the power of people is where it's all going to come from. But if you want to say how you feel about climate change again, then that's fine. And then I'll leave up the final slide for you to put an action in for after the session. So that's me. You can carry on adding stuff into that. Drew, are you able to wrap up your bit? Whilst
any
you're
kind
creating
of
your
tips
own
for game makers? Yeah.
Build a minimum viable product, test, iterate, test, iterate, test, iterate, test, iterate, test, iterate, and never give up.
Oh, Drew, absolutely what you said. Absolutely. Let's find out if they've got any actions they're going to take. And Bill, I think you need to do your bit as well.
I have a few slides at the very end, but maybe people can enter in stuff here. And again, please do note that we'll be sharing information from this materials, recording resources. So, I'll work with Drew and Emma to make sure that we have kind of very useful information. Buy bananas, not tomatoes. There's your take home. How bad are bananas? Not bad as you thought. I'm going to get my... Oh, sorry, go on.
Only just on that's too simplistic, right? Although I know people will probably be making a joke out of it, but actually buy bananas and buy tomatoes when they're in season locally. It's actually the answer.
There you go. Great. Well, just the final slides on my end were to, again, thank our speakers. I really appreciate what you brought to the webinar and to Green Action Week here in Oxford. And just to mention that there are additional resources from the Oxford Education Deanery. There's online resources, so you can find them on the Deanery website. Again, there's a short link for it, but you can also see research, podcasts, resources, as well as kind of on-demand content. And then with the mailing list, you can have all of this in your inbox. Again, it's handy. Again, there's a QR code there, but just because we only have 1 minute, we'll share this all around with anyone who signed up for the webinar. So you have that access. There's a feedback form which will come in as well. And then I see Emma, you've got a hand up. There's just 2 other things I'll mention is that we have future events coming, a really great event this summer for looking at climate and nature. It'll be in person at the Department of Education at Oxford. And then we also have something around using school grounds in the curriculum at Charwell School in Oxford in April. Emma, what was so your hand was up there, sorry.
Do you know, and I'm having a woman of a certain age moment and have completely forgotten. No, it was the chat. Are you going to collect the chat and actually distribute that?
We'll try and download the chat and figure out how to best share that. I'll work with the Deanery team on that. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you to our speakers. It's been really brilliant. And keep playing games and keep learning and keep doing and feeling all the feels. This is all really great.
Thank you so much. It was brilliant. So lovely to meet everybody.